E mihi ana hou ki ngā mana whenua o te rohi nei, ki te Atiawa, me ngā iwi katoa o te upoko o te ika Māui. E mihi ana ki ngā manuhiri o ngā hau e whā, ki ngā manuhiri e rere ana koutou ki te waka o Huitopa. E ngā kai kōrero o te ata, e mihi ana hou ki a koutou. Tēnā tātou katoa. Ko waiau, he tangata tiriti a hau, no Ingarani, Airani, Kotiwani, Hiamani hoki oku tupuna. I whānau au ki te whanganui atara, i tipu aki au ki Wairarapa, ki te tonga. Ko au te tahi o ngā kai rangahau o te kuninga ki Purihuroa, ko Kelly Dombroski tōku ingoa. Ka tika te kōrero, e hara taku tō i te tō takatahi, engari he tō takatini. Tēnā tātou katoa. Welcome everyone to this event. It's so exciting to finally be here, this Circular Economies, Measuring Circular Economies event. Just acknowledging those speakers and kai karanga and kai mahi doing our kai, and all those people that have supported us to get here to this point. And I also forgot to mention our wonderful webcasting team, Mike and Andrew out the back, and then these wonderful young people here who are behind the cameras. Tēnā tātou katoa. My name's Kelly Dombroski. I was born here in Wellington, and my ancestors came from England, Ireland, Scotland and Germany. And I grew up in Wairarapa, just over the Remutaka Hill there. So it's just great to be grounded here at Pukeahu to run this event for you guys. What I'd like to do is just start off a little bit. How did we get here? Why are we here? It'll just be a couple of minutes, and then I'll introduce you to Jay, who's our keynote for this morning. You've got these programs here, and I was just feeling a bit whakamā about them because we've got these incredible designers in the room who design like fashion clothing, and I kind of sent the wrong one to the printer, and it looks like something a 5-year-old would have put together on Canva. In fact, my 5-year-old can do better. So, hey, but you don't even need your glasses for this, those of us of that in the size 16 font. But anyway, just thought I would mention that for those of you who are the wonderful artists and designers here. Circular economy. Why are we here? What is it? That's our session. What is circular economy? I'm a social scientist, I'm a geographer. Many of us in this organising committee come from the social sciences, and we talk about economy as a social a way of society organising themselves. So a circular economy is a way of organising ourselves as society that breaks with the current linear economic rationale of take, make and dispose, and instead creates a circular material flow of reduced repair, reuse and return. And for many of the industry speakers here today, you might not be using the language of circular economy, but we've invited you because you are doing work that aims to reduce extraction and waste, and that is one really important step in enacting and transitioning to circular economies in Aotearoa, New Zealand and everywhere else in the world. Some of you may know this idea of metabolic rift. Sorry for the detailed slides up there. This is an idea that, you know, living in small communities before urbanisation, industrialisation, a lot of what we grew, a lot of what we ate was excreted and put back into the soil right where it came from. And so that nutrient cycle was very small, the circularity was a small circle, but now most of us are connected into a globalised economy and that circle is broken. Things are produced in New Zealand using our soil, using our water, exported overseas. What happens to that food that we've created, that butter that's so expensive that none of us can afford anymore? What happens to that literally at the other end? It's in Dubai, it's in China, it's in other parts of the world. So that circularity is really broken, and then we've put together all these ways of managing that. Importing fertiliser, having to think about how do we manage that nutrient cycle. The last bit here is one from Cultivate in Christchurch, which is a community garden who tried to create a circular economy that was restoring that in the centre of Otautahi Christchurch, where they picked up green waste from businesses in the city by e-bike, composted it on site right in the city, grew vegetables on that, and then sold those vegetables back to those same restaurants or different restaurants in the area. So they were trying to kind of make that little circle economy. But obviously, many of us work in industries where that is not possible at this point. But what is possible is what we're here today to talk about. So those of us that have been researching in the economic space and the community economy space for a long time, circular economy is not a new idea, but it's a word that's gained traction, although our current government has downed the word for a while. Globally, it's still a concept that has a lot of traction. It's quite popular in engineering and design to talk about circular economy. In the social sciences, there's lots of other words that we've used historically, but we kind of get on board and go, yeah, you guys are talking about that. We also know about that. So that's where we're coming from. But our main point for our group of researchers is that circular economy is not just about technological innovation. It's not about creating new products that go into that take, make, waste system. It requires social and cultural innovation. What do we mean by that? A lot of you who've tried to do innovative sustainability things tell us that sometimes it's the connecting the dots that's the problem. If there's a new product that's compostable, who's going to compost it? Where is it going to be composted? Is there enough compost to compost all of that stuff that's being produced? And often that part of it hasn't been thought about it. That's what we mean by the social and cultural aspects of circular economy. We've got to think about how do we link those together? How do people's embodied habits have to change? How do our habits of connecting or disconnecting have to change? What kind of new ways of getting what we need have to come into being? And our speakers will speak more about that today. So just a brief run through of what we're going to cover today. Researcher talks. Why does the circular economy need measuring? That's our focus for session 1. Industry talks, improvement barriers and possible research questions. That's our focus for session 2. And then our last session of the day is final thoughts. What next for this project of measuring circular economy? So we've built in a lot of free time today. You've already experienced the relaxed start to the day. There's lots of time for kai. There's lots of time for kōrero. Part of what we want to do is not just put information in your head, but create opportunities for networking and connection. So in that line, I'd just like our team, our organiser team, to stand up so you can identify yourselves. These are the people who are behind this event today. Georgia, Graydon, Nitha, Sita and Derilee, and of course Dana, who you've all been in contact with. So if you need anything, that's us. We're here to help you today. Okay. Going to move on to Jay's talk, and I'll introduce Jay to you, and some of you may know him already. Dr. Jay Whitehead is Kati Mamoe Kaitahu. He's an economist specialising in social cost-benefit analysis, decision science and impact management. If you're on LinkedIn, you wouldn't have missed his social impact work, which is posted regularly. It's all for free. You can work out how to do a social return on investment for your organisation. And his work really focuses on revealing the hidden value of people, communities, and the environment. And he helps people translate these benefits into the language of decision makers, helps organisations attract investment, secure funding, and build strong cases for environmental and social initiatives. He's worked across government, the private sector, and universities, and now leads Matatihi, an economic research company dedicated to intergenerational wellbeing. So Jay, I'd like to invite you up. Let's give him a round of applause. You can use this if you want to walk around with the change. But
thanks for that. There's some notes just to start. Well, kia ora. E nā mana, e nā reo, e nā karangaranga maha, tēnā koutou katoa. Tēnei te mihi ki a koutou o te rau karamu. E te hou kāinga, mo te pōwhiri, me te manakitanga, nā mihi ki nā kaikaranga, nā kai kōrero, mi nā ringawera, tēnā koutou i te whakataui a mato tēnei. He mihi mai hoa ki a koutou katoa, no reira tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Hei uri aho no kaitahu me Kati Mamoe, ko ora kaparima tokurunaka, ko takutai o te titi toku marae, ko Jay toku ingoa. E te whānau o te rau karamu, ke nui te mihi, kua rongamato I tō koto manakitanga, e he honore nui kia tua I kone. E muri I te pōwhiri, ki te kōrero mō te kaupapa o tēnei rā. Kia ora, I'm Jay. I'm an economist, but not that kind of economist, if you know what I mean. The sort of gooey social kind of economist. So yeah, I whakapapa way down south to Oraka, which is Colic Bay, Aparima, Riverton, Rakiora Māori, the birding communities down there. So they're my people. I live in Otatahi and Christchurch, and my family's slowly creeping its way up the east coast, but we haven't quite got to the North Island yet. So what I want to do is begin where the pōwhiri left us, which is grounded in relationships. I'm not a circular economies expert, so surprise. But I am focused on economies. I believe that economies at their best are not just systems of exchange, but systems of reciprocity, where trust and contributions like build on top of each other, and value doesn't just return, but it escalates over time. So my kōrero this morning is about how we design for that, relationships that grow value across generations, and decisions that turn connection into compounding benefits. And that's everything I wanted to say. Now here's what I'm going to say, and I never quite know what that is, so I'll just put those notes down. So this is what the talk's about. Me. Okay, I'm going to cover a bit of that because I always want to know who's talking to me and if I should pay attention. So I'll give you a bit of that. Reciprocity, this is really my big thing. Its role in underpinning great systems, reciprocity being the key there. Success, I want to give you the evidence that this isn't just a nice gooey economist idea. This has actually got tangible impacts in reality. Methods that I draw on a lot that help sort of amplify reciprocal decision making. Accountability, because accountability is important when you're bringing these sort of social ideas into a space where decisions are being made and those decisions have consequences. Then we need some measurement and accountability, and really amplification. How can we bring this sort of knowledge to the people who are best placed to use it and to create powerful impacts, which is often not journal papers, if you talk to me. And this pitch is not completely random. It's basically what my work looks like. So I thought I'd chuck it in there. I'm going to base a lot of this around this kind of, this idea of a reciprocal system. And it's got a couple more parts than a typical reciprocal system, but I'll just put it there for now, and we're going to come back to that in a few ways. So yeah, who am I? What am I doing here? Why am I talking to you? I'm going to start in 1999 when I failed high school because I was getting paid to ride downhill mountain bikes, and that seemed way more exciting, and still kind of does. My mate found an ad in a newspaper saying, work in Japan, and we called the number, turned up. It was a dude sitting inside a storage unit with a roller garage door, and he had a desk in the middle, and he said, I'll get you a job in Japan, and we said yes, and it was real, and I've still got both my kidneys. So that worked out. So I went and worked in Japan in this car factory like the size of Christchurch. It was insane, next to an indoor pig farming operation, which in summer was truly awful. And I kind of got interested in sustainability about that time and thought something feels off. And I came up with this fantastic idea. I learned about the Global Reporting Initiative, which had only been out a few years by then. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do something better. I'm going to make a computer program version of the Global Reporting Initiative when I was like 19. So I came back to New Zealand, did computer programming, studied that, found out that you can't launch a global initiative at 20 with no experience. So switched to electrical engineering, 2 years in, colorblind, really bad trait for an electrical engineer, quit that. Went to Lincoln University, thought, all right, I'll try this properly, did a Bachelor of Resource Studies, like environmental science. That actually worked. Passed that. Went and taught English in Japan because I was out of money, and that's a good way to get money. Came back, Masters of Environmental Policy, got a job at the Christchurch City Council, lasted about a year. I think what put me over the edge was a phone call saying, can you help my neighbours feeding seagulls and they keep pooping on my lawn as they cross? And I thought, I've studied 5 years for this. So I left that, went to Lincoln University, joined the agribusiness and economics research unit there and worked on this big program called the New Zealand Sustainability Dashboard, which went for about 6 years. And I was real into sustainability. This project kind of put me off sustainability because I wanted it to be more than it was, and it was all meeting minimum standards. And once again, even with millions of dollars and professors and everything, I still couldn't do what I wanted to do in about the year 2000 at the top, which was create a system that was aspirational, that actually drove improvements and meant something. And yeah, the millions of dollars still couldn't achieve that. So I thought, we'll just go switch. I'm going social. So I went into the social side, did a PhD in economics. I'd done economics all the way through, became a consultant, learnt those skills, started Matatihi. Here I am. That's me. So this is what Matatihi does. It does economic research, like a lot of government-funded public research projects. And we do a lot of consulting on social impact assessment, social return on investment, social cost-benefit analysis, basically non-market valuation. How do we put a dollar value on things that don't have a market price so that we can communicate to people whose brains only work in dollars? And that's quite a lot of people. So it's really, I think of myself as a communicator more than a scientist these days. I'm taking the knowledge from one realm, converting it into a language that other people understand and giving it to them. And then I have another company called MindState, which builds software for decision-making within iwi organizations and stuff. Just a little glimpse of who we work with, so you can see how chaotic my life is. It goes from the New Zealand Stock Exchange to medical cannabis to universities. It's all over the place. So the key theme is the method, not the sector or the industry. Yeah. Right, that's enough about me. We'll get into the actual good stuff now. So basically all my work is within the realm of the Māori economy these days. It's all informed by Te Ao Māori principles. This is one of my favourite ethics that underpins so much. I mean, this is what's underpinning the pōwhiri today, the idea of the reciprocity of the speaking. You find it in so many areas. And, if you think about reciprocity as a circle, taututu is not really like that. It's a system of reciprocity that escalates over time as one gift to another party is reciprocated at a higher scale, and it escalates and it escalates and it achieves balance as it goes, but that balance is constantly growing over time. Being economists, you can think of taututu as having almost two currencies, one being the currency of mana, one being the currency of mauri. The social currency being mana. When the exchanges between people, it's mana that's being exchanged and uplifted. When you're looking at the relationship between people and the environment, the currency being mauri, that's what is attempted to be uplifted over time. And one of my favourite examples of this playing out historically, hakari, sort of like a ritual feast. So the chief would host a feast, invite the manuhiri, the hapu from surrounding areas to come to the feast. It was a chance to, to manaki to them, to provide hospitality, to demonstrate wealth and power. But what happens is that the guests at this feast then are expected to reciprocate in the future at a different time. And what ends up happening is something like this. This is a tower to display the food, yeah? So, you get these enormous structures like growing and growing to just provide more and more hospitality to, give back in a way that's escalating over time. And I think it's just a fantastic example of how, the idea of escalating reciprocity informed by this taututu ethic can create these incredibly strong bonds between people and underpin those systems. But it's not just, historical practices. This is one of our projects we've been working on for years called Kaitiaki Intelligence Platforms, and this is a full remote sensing array for Māori farms. It's down the middle, you've got all the in-ground sensors around pH and nitrates and everything. You've got satellite arrays with machine learning algorithms. It's all very, very high tech. It's connected into international markets. Ngāi Tahu, we're building this for Ngāi Tahu at the moment. And sitting around the outside, we have the context that this is working in, the atua, the papatua noku, ranginui, the connections between this and the cultural world, the spiritual world, how this all comes together and works towards one cause. So, it's not just a historical concept, it's a practice that can really amplify current technological systems right now. For next, I just want to play a quick game with you, and it's not a fun game because it's an economics game. But think about this scenario, okay? Okay, impact, I used this for a different conference, sorry, so it was an impact investing conference, but just run with it, it'll make sense. Impact RS has given me $100 to share between myself and another person who is interested in impact investing, i.e. you. I have no relationship with Impact RS, it's just a weird random gift for me and for you. So these are the rules. You must either accept or reject the offer I make you. If you accept, the money is paid as proposed. If you reject, neither of us gets anything. It's one shot, no negotiations, and here's my offer. This is how I'm going to split the money with you. I get $70 and I give you 30. Hands up, who would accept? It's probably about half. Yeah, which is about sort of higher than we would expect, which is interesting because that's good. You're very rational homo economicus type people. Yeah. So it's interesting. Now, in game theory and behavioral economics, essentially once the split moves beyond about 50-50, people start rejecting it. And, classical economics would say that's just idiotic. Why would you reject it? It's free money. Take it. Even if it's $1, you should still accept it. But we don't work like that, yeah. We have a punishment impulse, and we're going to say, screw you, you're not getting your $70, you're getting nothing. I played this as a experiment with about 14 leaders of really high-performing Māori farms. So that, think the Midak is the best of the best in terms of profitability, really leading the agricultural industries in New Zealand. And we gave them a very similar scenario. It was more contextualized to their situation, but basically the same rules. In the first instance, 73% said they would accept that deal. Literature would show 50% at most. 73 is just unheard of that many would accept a bad deal like that. So this is, the bad deal. They get the 30, the other party gets the 70. So these leaders were accepting that bad deal. The reason they were giving for why they would accept such a terrible deal was relationships. They said, look, this is our doorway in. We might be able to establish a connection. We can build a relationship. Over time, we might come to an understanding, and this would be in our benefit. So then we gave them a second scenario. In this scenario, they say, hey, let's do 50-50. The other company comes back and says, nah, we're going to give you 40 and we're going to take 60. So a better deal for them. For the Māori executives, this is a better deal, lower acceptance rate than the first one, because that initial gift was not reciprocated in any way. So it's still, it's about what we'd expect an answer to be, but it just shows that it's not the number that matters. It was the intention and the relationship that went behind the number. So that sort of sits on our give side of the spectrum, that if you're initiating a relationship to build a functional system and a partnership, then that initial gift has to be acceptable in order to be reciprocated. I want to just talk about the Māori economy a bit, because this is where I think it's real interesting. It doesn't, and anyone who's seen my work on LinkedIn probably knows what's coming, because I'm a bit of a, I'm real into what Māori are doing in the economy. I think there's a lot to celebrate that's not getting attention. I think it shows how these business models that have been developed within the Māori economy in the last couple of decades are really escalating now, and the value is growing very fast. I also want to dispel a few myths in this about what the Māori economy is based on. I still think it's commonly understood to be a land and ocean and agricultural primary industries based economy, and it's just really not. The biggest contribution from the Māori economy to GDP is in professional, scientific and technical services. It's a knowledge-based economy. Agriculture is quite far down, and this is the growth rates of those economies. You can see agriculture is growing nowhere near as fast as these other knowledge-based sectors. So the professional service sector grew 323% in not a very long amount of time, which is pretty impressive. It's far outstripping national averages, by the way. If you want to compare like to like, it's still impressive. If you compare Māori working in these sectors, you can see that the primary industries down the bottom pretty much flat, whereas the high value service and manufacturing sectors are really taking off. If you look at the Māori population versus the asset base in a 10-year period, that grew 13%, the population, and the asset base grew 83%. Looking at self-employed and self-employed income, you can see the thick yellow line down the bottom being Māori self-employed income, actually higher now than European and increasing pretty steeply. So there's this real push into entrepreneurship, ownership, self-determination. The chart on the right's a bit squashed for some reason, sorry. But self-employed people increasing, Māori-owned businesses increasing. And I just did this survey a couple of weeks ago with Amutai, a social procurement system run out of Auckland Council. I don't know if it's still in the council or not, but up that way. And what we were asking is, all these business owners, I ran this little experiment within the survey to say, what would it take in terms of money to get you to give up running a business and just get a job? How much do I have to pay you to convince you to stop running a business and get a job? And on the salary scale, I think it topped out at about four times what they currently earn. Say 4 times what you currently earn, would you accept that to get a job? Basically, no one would. And we couldn't, our scale wasn't big enough, essentially. But then we got quotes like this saying, look, no reasonable figure would get me to give up my business. Like, mana motuhake, the self-determination, that autonomy is so important. Rush through a couple more. Export gains increasing quicker than the whole economy. Wahine Māori, this is from an old survey, but I think it's just so cool that top 3% entrepreneurial populations, not all good. I mean, could be good depending on how you read this, but, you know, the value of Wahine Māori to the economy, 6 billion paid, 6 billion unpaid. I say not good and good because good, I mean, what an incredible amount of work that's been done. Not good, it's not being recognised. Māori PhD candidates, doubled, pretty cool, that's pretty cool. Thing to keep in mind, 2043, 1 in 3 tamariki will be Māori. This is a young and growing population, so, you know, we should be planning these systems now to account for what's coming in the future because it's going to be a pretty significant block. Just one more point on this. I mean, my favourite thing of working in the Māori economy is the time frames, yeah. Working with Onuku, where we're doing a 200-year plan. I mean, to be able to sit down and plan for 200 years around what's going to happen, what we need to think about over that time period. I mean, how do you design a system that lasts 200 years? It takes some incredible forethought and back thought too to say what was there before and what do we want to come. The other big part of my work is capturing many voices and many values in the decision-making process. And this comes in, I say, as balance. It's about balancing a portfolio of interests, balancing a portfolio of opportunities. I put this quote up because I remember dealing with the CEO of a large organization, and we had been brought in to help them with some strategic allocation of resources or some corporate wonky sounding thing like that. But it wasn't a Māori organization, and he wasn't the one who brought us in. It was a he. I mean, it was a he. So he was, you know, just sitting there saying, look, this whole thing's stupid. We don't need a process. We don't need a system. I already know what we should do. What's the point of all this? And what's the point of you? And, you know, this is a very large, diverse organization that celebrated its diversity. And I think this is a common problem we struggle with, in that diversity on its own, just in terms of staff count, means nothing if that diversity of opinion and culture and thought is not incorporated into the actual decision process. If it's just consultation, it's just, yeah, we'll listen and then us 5 and the board will decide. That doesn't really cut it, yeah. So we spend a lot of time, and Mindstake is built around this, of how do we actually capture diverse voices in a way that can inform decision-making directly and not just be consultation. Let's skip that one, actually. So, you know, I work in the area of MCDA, or multi-criteria decision analysis. There's lots of ways to do this, and, you know, choice modelling and best-worst methods and other things in my realm, but you don't need MCDA to do this. Rather than looking at the method, we'll look at an example because it's more fun. So this is Whangarā Farms, who are up in the East Coast, Gisborne area. 3 big land blocks, quite a traditional farm in a way, you know, sheep and beef, little bit of native bush, some degraded wetlands, not a whole lot apart from commercial farming. So it's a private farm. It's not a Māori trust or anything, but it's all Māori owned. And they wanted to develop a 100-year plan, and not quite as ambitious as Onuku, only 100 years. And they wanted to know what to do with their land in the next 100 years. So they've got all this land, and they're thinking, what should we do with it? And what they wanted was to capture the preferences of the whole Whangarā Farms community. So this involved executive leadership, teams. This involved farm managers, farm workers, marae communities, whānau of marae communities, the shareholders. There was 2,000 odd of them. And so we ran this choice model with them, saying, look, given this opportunity to create a land use plan over the next 100 years, what do you want to promote? What's your preferences for what you want to promote on this land over that time? And this has been all aggregated up, but you can see that if we look at it in terms of manaakitanga, initiatives that support the community, maybe it's bringing in rangatahi, bringing in young people to work on the farm, mentorship programs, things like that. Kaitiakitanga, so, let's restore the wetlands, replace some biodiversity, do pest control. Rangatiratanga, how do we exert leadership and governance over our area? How do we, get into having more of a say? Whairawa, the profit, should we be going down the path of high-intensity commercial farming? Should we be looking at price premiums in export markets, making more money? What's fascinating about this is just some of the responses, but you can see they're very diverse. Each square is someone's preference against that criteria, and they range the whole way across, up and down. As a set, though, almost incredibly well balanced. You look at that as a community and you say this community cares about all four of these things almost equally. So it's really useful in a couple of ways, this. One, the leaders can understand that, hey, if I'm a CEO who really cares about profit, and I think everyone cares just as much as me about profit, no, they don't. So it helps them to see, but we can also break this down and then compare them against each other. So we can say, okay, look, you executive and board members, here's your preference set. Here's the marae community's preference set that you're talking to this weekend when you go to present your 100-year plan. What do you think they care about? Is it the same as what you care about? So we're trying to align those two sets of preferences to help people understand each other and communicate with each other. Yeah. This is a bit out of context, but I like to put this up because I quite often get asked by researchers to say, how do we work with Māori? And I find that there's this lack of understanding around the value of knowledge, and that value doesn't need to come with a title or a piece of paper with a qualification to show it has value. And I think I first saw this as sort of the locksmith dilemma. A locksmith comes to your car and pops it open in 5 seconds and charges you $300, and you think, what? No way, man. And this is that. It's you might work with Māori and get the tikanga shared with you over a 1 hour period and you think that's great. But what went into that? Could you get that any other way? No, pay for it. That's my message, pay for it. The other thing we really need to do, though, is stay accountable in the social space, because it is gooey, and the environmental space has been quite far ahead in terms of accounting for impacts, accounting for climate and biodiversity. It is much more measurable in some sense. And if we want to understand, what giving into these sectors actually returns to us, then it is a useful path to go down. There's been a big shift in New Zealand since the last national government. I mean, originally Bill English tried to move the country in this direction towards quantifying social impacts, sort of dropped off for a while, and then the last national government's really pushed it hard. The social wellbeing agencies, now the social investment agency, all the mental health community funding and stuff. You have to provide social return on investment reports. There's a real feeling in the NGO and trust sectors where I spend most of my time that if you can't monetize your achievements, then no one's going to pay attention. You're not going to get funding. There's some upsides. if the policy intent is to steer money towards the best impacts, then hey, it can work as long as that impact assessment's good. It sets a higher methodological bar. This has been a pretty rogue sector. People doing social return on investment reports are quite often people with a fine arts degree. And I love fine arts, but it's not really the qualification for economics. So it's there needs to be a little bit more rigor in the sector. And also internally, it really helps organisations identify what they're doing that has impact and then lean into that more and do more of that. It's definitely not all good though. I thought this post on LinkedIn was sort of summarised it all. It's a woman with an impressive social scheme talking to potential investors and getting the comment like, yeah, interesting, but we're looking for an ROI of 10. I mean, these numbers are meaningless, and the idea that a social initiative with a 10 is better than one with a 6 makes no sense whatsoever, right? So, there's some real downsides here. The cost and access barriers. If you're a small trust and you want to get an impact report and someone from Deloitte's is like, yeah, cool, $40,000, it makes it so hard for these trusts to exist in the current funding environment. The focus on a single number that can give you an idea of social impacts within an initiative is just wrong. The method opacity, the sector is new, the science is gooey, there isn't that real rigor in the methods yet. And this is the kind of the way I like to think of it. I like to think of dollars as a language. I am an economist, I work in dollars, but I don't think the dollars have any value in themselves. I think the great sage Bruce Lee can say that it's like a finger pointing to the moon. The value is not in the dollar, but the value is what the dollar is pointing towards. And Alan Watts, brilliant man, strange man, but brilliant. The common error is to look at the finger pointing the way and then to suck it for comfort rather than follow it. And I think that's what often happens in economics, is that we price things and then people get attached to the price and not the thing. As another example, Mount Fife, it's in Kaikoura, it's a mountain means a lot to me. But there's two statements. Mount Fife provides 32 million in environmental service benefits per annum. Mount Fife is beautiful. Nobody has any problem with the second one. Quite a few people have a problem with the first one, but as far as I'm concerned, both of them don't capture what Mount Fife is. Both of them point towards some thing of importance on Mount Fife. Yeah, it's beautiful. That's not all it is. It's a lot of other things. Yes, it does provide that much in environmental service benefits, according to me anyway, who ran those numbers. But that doesn't tell you anything about Mount Fife. So it's like dollars are a language here. They never capture the full story, but you shouldn't be scared of them either in being, reductive, which they are reductive, but so is calling Mount Fife beautiful. I always want to bring in the voices, though. It's not enough to be an economist and talk in numbers. This is our Māori initiative that reviewed a few weeks ago, and just to hear that something that someone was involved in brought them back to their culture and just being Māori. I mean, that's powerful. We can't capture that in numbers. So it's always a balancing act between quantification and telling the story and the voice of the people who are part of that story. The final little set I wanted to go over was what I really care about is democratizing data and knowledge. Basically, how can we escalate impact in these sectors? How can we get better relationships, better returns from investment? For me, it's all about putting information out there in a way that everyone can understand and not just people with PhDs in economics. So I spend a bunch of time writing simple guides, chuck them up on the website, chuck them up on LinkedIn. I've got tools on the website. Like this one, I found that there's this incredible set of data that floats around in the economics world called multipliers data. And you can basically align to any funding request for information just with this data. So I bought it off a consultancy who spent 10,000 hours apparently making it. I think it paid like $25,000, and then I chucked it on my website for free. So anyone can go and access that, and that company no longer sells it, unfortunately. Oops. But it gets like 200-300 users a week, and it's like amazing, like that people can get this information. They don't need to go to an expensive consultant, and they can reply to those requests for information in a simple way. Yeah, so I'm a big fan of tools. AI is providing some pretty incredible options at the moment. You know, like this is just some work I'm doing down on the TT Islands. Basically, I can just chuck all my research, my messy data sheets into AI and say, that's the entire prompt that created this tool. There's nothing more. There was this one prompt. I get a tool. I can go and show it at the marae when I talk down there, and everyone can grasp this complicated story I'm telling them because it's just a picture now. So yeah, communication, you know, my socials, that's where I'm chucking all this stuff out there. Basically, you take a complex idea and mash it down to the absolute smallest point that still holds value. I like that. And I'm going to end it there so I don't go over time. Cool. Sweet. Thank you.
Oh, that's the wrong slide. Kia ora, Jay. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to grab my notes. Yeah, I can really hear your own escalating reciprocity coming through there with buying the data and chucking it online, and that was an escalation they probably weren't expecting. Yeah, and you know, just balancing your career with measuring the environmental impacts and measuring the social impacts, and sort of holding those alongside each other. And for those of us on our Measuring Circular Economies project, what we're really interested in is how do we create some kind of tool or some kind of method for industry, government, researchers to hold those things alongside each other in some kind of circular economy return on investment tool. So that's what we're working towards. So it's just been so nourishing to hear all of the things that you've already done in that space that, you know, help us think that through as well. So tēnā koe. It's my pleasure to introduce our respondents. And we will have some time for questions at the end, quite a lot of time. But what we'll do is we'll move on to our manuhiri, our guests from Ahitereiria, or I heard the kai kōrero this morning talk about it as the land of the sleeping land or the dreaming land in Te Reo Māori. I can't remember the exact phrase, but welcoming you from across the ocean. To come and speak to us. And our speakers are Stephen Healy, Associate Professor Stephen Healy, and Professor Abby Mellick Lopes, who are both living in Sydney, Australia. And the reason we invited them is they have just done such a long series of circular economy projects over many years, both together and separately. And they've explored so many aspects of circular economy with city councils, with business, with community groups, including very diverse community groups from many different cultural backgrounds with a lot of different cultural knowledge of reuse and repair and many of the other aspects of circular economy that we're interested in. So I'm just going to read a summarised version of their bios so you can remind yourself of what you signed up for on Eventbrite. So Stephen Healy is an award-winning teacher and author whose research explores processes of social transformation. His recent work on the circular economy explored how local identities, skills and practices have shaped sustainable production. He is co-author of the new book, Solidarity Cities, Encountering Racial Capitalism, Mapping Transformation. and one of my favourite books of all time, Take Back the Economy, An Ethical Guide for Transforming Our Communities. He's Associate Professor of Geography and Urban Studies at Western Sydney University. Abby Mellick Lopes researches the role of design in supporting the transition to a more sustainable and socially just urban futures. She recently completed a project titled Investigating Innovative Waste Economies, Redrawing the Circular Economy, which explored the rich diversity of economic practices that contribute to social and technical innovation in waste. So many interesting stories Abby has to tell you about urine diversion and really like nitty-gritty of how you do waste. Yeah. She edited the book Design Repair, Place, Practice and Community, and she's a Professor of Social Design in the School of Design at the University of Technology, Sydney. So I just welcome you up. You've got 20 minutes to respond a bit to Jay, to give us a sense of your own research and what you bring into the room as circular economy experts. As Jay said, he wasn't a circular economy expert. We're keen to hear from you. And then afterwards, we'll have a time of discussion with all three speakers. Yeah, give them a round of applause. Are you okay both standing here for our cameras? Yeah.
I guess I'll have to hold my notes.
You can go first.
Okay, yeah. Thanks very much, Kelly, for the invitation, and thanks as well, Jay, for sharing all of your knowledge with us. We received the talk yesterday, so I think what we're aiming for here is sympathetic resonance more than a kind of playback of all the incredible things that you shared with us. But there were a number of points of contiguity that I just thought I would begin by mentioning. And one is thinking about tomorrow's speaker, Joan Tronto, and her emphasis on care. Late in her life, in about 2017, I remember Kelly and I reading this paper in the US where she was saying, look, the problem is homo economicus, is a sort of very diminished understanding of what value is. And what we need is a new term, which she called hominus curens, the caring person. And for me, that directly connects to that idea of escalating reciprocity. Mm-hmm. That was fascinating for me. And again, just thinking about my intellectual genealogy, it really connects with Elinor Ostrom's concept of complex adaptive system management, that the collective care of commons requires sort of continuous improvisation and revisiting that endures over time. And that, you know, she was able to document commons that have listed for hundreds and hundreds of years, far longer than any joint stock corporation that I'm aware of anyway. So for thinking about durability, it's important. And why is durability important? Because we've got massive challenges like climate change that are going to require all hands on deck and intergenerational response under uncertain conditions. So again, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jay. I really appreciate the generosity of your work and its clarity and visual language, as I said to you before, and I find it really powerful and seductive from a design perspective. I think just thinking about what Stephen's just said, I think one of our challenges is that there are other things escalating in the world. There are bad, harmful things escalating in the world that are powerful. And so I have somewhat of a question, which is, how do we cost those harms? You know, in a sense, your story about the CEO did that. It's a comparison. But I think we need to be able to make visible and point to those things that are growing exponentially and causing harms, that are diminishing our capacity to care, to common, to build reciprocity, to build relationships, and kind of tearing and attenuating those social ties. So yeah, we're hitting up against our capacities as human beings somewhere in some ways. I'd love to talk to you about AI. I feel, you know, like an AI vegan. I feel like I feel, you know, conflicted, and I'd love to know more about how you are managing that. So yeah, I had a question, I guess around the costing of harms. We don't have to respond to those questions now. I think the other thing I just wanted to really, in terms of resonance, was to think about designing in time, thinking through time. We are often thinking about succession planning, like we work with communities where there are elders, and in some senses they are situated in broken worlds, and it's very difficult to think across time in the way that you have so beautifully demonstrated. Really would love to learn more about that. Just one final thing in terms of bringing care together with materials. Circular economy is so much about materials, the material, physical, biophysical world. And a long time ago, at the early days of what used to be called eco-design, at the birth of these kinds of industrial ecology, circular kinds of ideas, the Wuppertal Institute in Germany had this device. I'm not an economist, so I may get this very wrong, but it was called material input per unit of service. And why I found that so interesting was you can serve that measure through fast fashion, consumption, lots of products. So each unit of service, it can be a single-use thing that comes in plastic and you throw it away. But the material input per unit of service, if you expand the service, the sharing of things, the care and longevity of things, so that that use life of material things is expanded, then the material impact per unit of service can be vastly diminished, because you expand the consecutive and concurrent users. I don't like that language, but you know what I mean, the social side. I think that might be a measure that we could think about using, in a sense, to value caring for products and materials in time, because one of those escalating things is single-use plastics, and that's causing so much harm to all of us and country as well. Thank you. Yeah. So.
We've got a script.
Yeah, for our talk.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Okay. I won't explain that image. That came from Stephen. You can ask questions later. I'm from School of Design, but I'm often very critical of design. So it's one of those strange situations, and this is a little critical. But so this is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation version of the circular economy. You may be familiar with it, the so-called butterfly diagram, which is in wide circulation in Australia. It's based on, and when you look at it, it's actually quite confusing, especially a long way away, but it's essentially a splayed diagram of kind of technical and biological nutrients cycling in perpetual motion, and creating zero waste situation, very minimal leakage down the bottom. And it comes from design thinking. It comes from Michael Braungart and William McDonough's book Cradle to Cradle, which really emphasised this idea of waste equals food. Waste is bad. Waste doesn't happen in nature, and so we need to replicate this kind of beauty and abundance and perpetual value of circulation of value that is in nature. Now, we find this model problematic in both what it says rhetorically as an image, but also in what it does. What it says every time it's reproduced is that circularity is perfectly circular, involves singular, coherent flows of value, all lines are equivalent, free from hindrance and contamination, and results only in minimal leakage. The mess of the current world is simply erased. What it does, that model, is to promote a vision of circularity that is both replete and at scale. This vision informs, in a very direct manner, policy and expectation, but it is not grounded in the reality of the effort of actually making circular economies, which are typically nascent, socially led, small scale, and far from clean. And certainly do not fit with that sort of idealised vision of the circular economy. Hence the crucial stage of experimentation, of learning, and all the time that process takes is both devalued and overlooked. There is an assumed objectivity here, which is what Donna Haraway calls a God trick, in which we, the perceiver of the model, are everywhere and nowhere, benevolently omnipresent. Where we stand, our position is entirely absent. What's dangerous about the model, and this is a model, a representation, not a framework to think with like many of Jay's frameworks or other frameworks coming from the community economies. These are tools to think with. They're not models that we have to kind of, in a sense, aspire to or reach. What's dangerous is that it speaks first and speaks with both authority and a capitalocentric logic that erases economies, and I'm quoting Kelly here, as spaces of heterogeneity and difference. It is received as though it is something that can be achieved, or in fact has already happened, a fait accompli. And it's like we've come into the middle of a story and are locked out of contributing. The circular economy as a singular model fails to acknowledge and account for what we know is central to economic change, and that is social and, what Kelly said before, cultural innovation. This is not because novel ideas are not important in the development of circularity, but because the circular subjectivities, and I circle them here, of the consumer and the user are cogs in the circular machine. They really dominate and foreclose on other subject positions, the social innovator, the social learner, the carer, as Stephen said before. There's no room for a collective of more than one. I'm quoting Gibson Graham there, a we, an I thou, quoting Martin Buber, or an us two, quoting Tyson Yunkaporta. And yet, there are many versions of circularity other than the butterfly diagram.
Okay. So working with others across a range of projects, we find the diverse economies framework is a powerful entry point for surfacing the we, the I and thou, the us too, that do the work of circularity. For the past 2 decades, the diverse economies iceberg has worked to reframe economy as a space of heterogeneity, replete with different kinds of organizations, forms of exchange, practices of labor, ways of caring for commons and ourselves, and means of investing in a shared future. Appropriate for this talk, Clyde Binder replaces the iceberg with the diverse economies compost heap and its fermentations. In both our research and teaching, these figures do important work, not pointing to something new, but rather locating us inside the story, one whose end we don't already know, and it's exciting for precisely that reason. So we're now going to talk about 2 projects that challenge the dominant framing of circularity, the EMF version, putting collective social innovators, experimenters, and learners at the center of efforts to respond to the challenge of organic and electronic waste in our 2 examples. In each case, we found people working within organizations and across networks, elbows deep in the material, revaluing what is seemingly wasted, repairing, reusing, and even reinventing what's been cast off. So in this project, investigating innovative waste economies, we both worked on that project. We collaborated with Michelle Zybots, who is a transport planner and farmer, 3 coffee roasters, a multinational parent corporation, a social enterprise, and local councils to develop an innovative response to the challenge of organic waste. Oh, sorry. That's actually Michelle's sister, shoveling compost. So we explored reverse design logistics, the circular process of moving organic waste from urban sites and spaces back onto farms where they can serve as a rich conditioner for improving depleted soils and maintaining their fertility. Organic waste was a key focus for several reasons. The City of Sydney is looking to achieve 70% waste diversion from local landfill by 2030. That's 4 years from now. Organic matter is half of that waste stream, and if left to rot in landfill, organics cause significant greenhouse gas emissions. Organic waste can be a major problem for urban waste management sites as it's smelly, it gets moldy, and it's often contaminated by other materials, such as plastics from fruit stickers to serving utensils, and it can also be hazardous to handle. The forward supply chain that moves food from farm to fork is in working order. There is a significant challenge in logistical challenges in collecting and moving organic waste from city to farms that need working out, and the devil is in the details. For these reasons, we focused on spent coffee grounds as a relatively clean and abundant waste stream, potentially separated at the source by baristas everywhere. There are huge benefits for getting this right. Composting this material mitigates climate risks, supports waste diversion targets, while also improving soil productivity and water retention, and it contributes to farmland viability, and worms love it. Okay, so Michelle operates out of Hartley Vale, which is 130 kilometers west of Sydney's CBD, growing organic garlic for Sydney's wholesale market. With help from her family, oh, sorry, this is you.
okay.
All right.
No, keep going. Keep going.
We're trying to share the load here. Michelle has spent the past several years hauling organic waste, principally spent coffee grounds, but also dehydrated food waste from UTS campus to her 12-acre farm and composting it in windrows on her land, attracting the attention of other farmers. Michelle drew for us a version of a circular economy in her region, identifying people with whom she currently has relationships and those she wanted to draw into the conversation. You can take over now. Sorry, mate.
No, it's fine. Okay. So in December 2022, we held a collaborative design workshop in the design lab at the University of Technology, Sydney, to invent the circular supply chain with representatives drawn from Michelle's current and future social network. So we took her diagram and we invited people that she both already had relationships with and people she wanted to meet and draw in. We've actually found the workshop to be a powerful format for collaborative design work, opening a time-bound discursive space of rich interdisciplinary encounter and sharing. Importantly, the workshop privileges the agency and creative capacity of people to problematise the systems they're already caught up in and to collaborate in designing preferred futures, drawing upon their expertise, what they already know and what they already do. As one participant remarked, getting the entire supply chain in the room to do this inventive work had never in their experience been done before. In our workshop-based approach, we use visualisation as a tool to support participation and elicit creative contributions. Before the workshop, we developed a presentation to sensitise participants to the challenge and asked them to bring an object, image or a material that represents circularity to them to the workshop. I mean, that was effective for a lot of reasons, not least that a lot of the stuff was kind of smelly and visceral, and it was like the circular economy is this, not that thing that Ellen MacArthur says it is. So for the introductory exercise, participants sat in a circle with a centrepiece canvas, hand-drawn, because it's far more inviting of participation than beautifully developed canvases that people don't want to touch because they're too pretty, so we tend to rip paper and draw on them by hand. People took turns introducing themselves and the material they'd brought and placed them in the centre of the circle. This process provoked immediate connections. For example, one of the coffee roasters had brought in a waste material, a byproduct of the coffee roasting process called chaff, and this was a new material for many of us in the circle. They said they were looking to reuse this substance, which was currently going to landfill, and 3 hands shot up and said, oh gosh, I'll take it to use on my farm. So it was that kind of economisation that was sort of happening in the room. For the second activity, participants gathered around a 4-metre map of the circular supply chain placed on the floor of the design lab, which kind of made it coherent. We were all working on the same thing, we're all in this together. The map represented the reverse logistics of getting spent coffee grounds back onto the land from waste production, sorting and separation, hauling, composting and farming. This process elicited conversations and problem solving up and down the chain just by talking to people and getting a sense of a shared language all together as a kind of source of a sort of different way of doing things. After the workshop, we synthesised the data into a report and translated participants' ideas into diagrams such as this to facilitate further discussion. The workshop helped to identify several important issues which weren't necessarily planned, new material values, so it identified the value of certain waste materials like chaff, which had great value at the farm end as a bulking agent in compost. It identified several key practical matters and questions such as how much material can be collected, who will collect it, how often, how do we value this, how can we leverage truck backfill journeys and disused council land, how can we sort of enrol all of that, what is to hand into the process, and finally, how can we best work within the current rules while the regulatory environment, and as we know with organics, or maybe it's different here, like everything else better here, I don't know, it's taking a while to catch up. So how can we move around the rules until that context changes? And finally, a really key issue for everyone was the importance of collecting data to measure the benefits at each point in the chain and to communicate impact and value through storytelling. And that was a challenging one because, as the hauler said, I never collect waste without collecting data, but the idea of a data commons or sharing of that mechanism wasn't there yet. So that was also something that needed to be invented. Probably the most significant thing that the workshop achieved was that it helped build a social alliance. The sharing of knowledge and innovative practical ideas did more than 1,000 reports could do because everyone in the room was learning on the job already and being valued for what they already know and do. What we were really missing was the orchestration of that collective, and that's what the workshop helped to achieve. As Michelle said, the technology is actually very easy. It's the social organisation part of it that is hard. In the 18 months since the initial workshop, we've continued to meet with the group to plan a larger pilot as a basis for ongoing social learning. You learn more about the problems and the solutions this way, but it's all good, right? You're kind of developing your resilience. In the process, we've widened the circle to include multinationals operating in the same industry, farmers working on larger acreages with experience in commercial composting, and other potential industry partners.
Okay. Did you miss that last paragraph there?
Yeah. I'm not sure about that paragraph.
Better move on then. On the fly editing. Okay, so we're going to talk about a second project here, and we're coming in for a crash landing at this point. So the second project we wanted to talk about was one looking at the benefits of reuse, social, economic, and ecological. In the Measuring the Benefits of Reuse project, we partnered with Charitable Reuse Australia, which is the peak body in the sector. So this project involved developing a framework to calculate the value of reuse using point-of-sale data. We didn't realize we could just borrow it from Jay's website, as well as qualitative approaches for capturing the meaning and significance of reuse. So one organization we worked with was a project called Substation 33, which is a subsidiary of a faith-based organization, YSF, that works in disadvantaged Logan County just south of Brisbane. Their primary objective is to use electronics waste and recycling to provide training and livelihood opportunities for people in Logan, including those at a distance from the labor market. So, but Substation, which is located in a disused council building from which it gets its name, began to develop something else with help from volunteers and staff. So initially, one thing that they did was they rehomed computers that were discarded from the corporate and public sector donors, computers that were used for 3 years and then the lease ends and then they just discard them, and then they rehomed them in communities in Logan, particularly during COVID times. This was really important for young people. Then they took the graphics and memory cards from computers that they couldn't rehome, and these gleaned electronics were combined with lithium batteries to invent an array of devices. The batteries are subject to stringent testing and sorting by rate of discharge and battery life. This process takes a couple of months, and then they're put to work. So, for example, Substation tech experts partnered with area high school and university students to invent road signs that light up when the flood comes in, the float goes up, the sign comes on, and then it sends an email to local councils. And in the same vein, they invented smart buoys that measure water levels in Queensland rivers. And these rivers were experiencing a 100-year flood every 2 weeks in 2022, if you'll remember that year. So this organization uses tracking to measure the process of reuse, tracking the mood, skills development, and capacities of volunteers. In the 6 hours that we were there doing interviews, former volunteers were returning to drop in, catching up, showing off babies, and reconnecting. So this is a place, not just a social enterprise. Inventive reuse unfolded through a combination of skills and materials, while meaning seemed to emanate through the people involved. Reuse's reinvention was not just in the things, but between the people, community-based organizations, universities, and local governments. So that's the reuse's reinvention part. So if we take the circular economy as an aspirational ideal, then the image of an achievable one, it should not only be about recovering value, but also about generating future economic, ecological, and social possibilities, such as the distribution of surplus products back to communities and the environment, and the repair and care of commons that support life. We see the university, where we're currently working, as playing a crucial role in this process as a space for discovery, experimentation, data sharing, social learning, and innovation. That's it, and what do you know? It's 12 o'clock. I don't know how that happens. There's the messiness of composting. So thanks for your attention.
Slightly rosy picture of the university there at the end, but
Aspirational.
There's
There's aspiration. Yeah. Thank you so much. How are we? Oh, good. Thank you. Jay, do you want to join these guys up here? I could see the escalating reciprocity in Substation 33 as you were talking about it, to put it in Jay's language. And it was really nice to see the way that your work intersects, but it's also quite different. So thank you for bringing that to us. We're now going to open up for a time of questions, but first I'll just give Jay an opportunity to provide any reflections on their talk. You don't have to, it's an opportunity. And then open up to the audience for questions. And please wait till you have a mic, because this session is being web streamed, and we want our whānau at home to be able to hear what you say.
If there's any questions?
That was your opportunity and you missed it. No, you can have that one.
1, 2. Oh, is it on? Oh.
Yeah, no, I don't have any meaningful reflections, only that it's just really cool. and it just reminds me a lot of the work in the organisations I help, that I'm not involved in the sort of work that you're doing, but I'm involved in helping those kind of organisations communicate the work that they're doing. And you just look at it and you think, well, all those positive impacts that fall out of something like Substation 33, it's like the connectedness to other people, it's the sense of purpose, it's it's all this stuff that sits behind the obvious bit of recycling batteries that I think for me is the bit where I'm like, oh, this is adding quality of life benefits. Is that being recognised? And it's like, how many layers of social impacts are sitting there? So yeah, cool stuff.
Adrian.
Tēnā koutou. Thank you all so much for that rich kōrero that you have all given. I just have a question for Jay. I really was so interested in the stats that you had behind wahine Māori in business, and I was just wanting to know, are you able to just share a little bit more about those key drivers that you've seen this explosion with wahine Māori being self-employed? Is it coming from, Māori women's development? Is it coming from funding panels like Potama? And also on the back of that, is there any specific industries you're seeing open up? Like, is it wahine Māori using ancestral knowledge for starting their business? Like, is there anything interesting that you could share along that? Ngā mihi.
Yeah. Like I mentioned, that survey's a little bit old and they stopped doing it, which is a real shame, because I want to see how that's changed. But from what I remember, a lot of it comes from a caring role to begin with. There is this feature that wahine Māori are playing this role they're playing that helps other people, and that tends to escalate into being a business of some kind. So it's like, well, I've been helping these young people with kapahaka and now I run a school. And it always seemed, from what I saw, to grow out of not having an intention to create a business. It was having an intention to help other people that ended up being a business. And yeah, that was the pathway. But I mean, it's been a few months since I looked at it, but I think you'll find wahine Māori existing in all those self-employed stats, those business starting stats. What's behind it, I really don't know. You probably have a better idea than me, I'm sure.
So for our Australian friends, wahine Māori means Māori women, businesses that Jay was talking about.
Oh, me.
Yep, Catherine at the back there, and then here, and then over here.
Yeah, thanks so much. I've got a related question, I think, because I was really taken, Jay, with your representation of money, cash, as a language. Really like that way of thinking about it. It's really useful. And at the same time, when you were talking about the even split between paid and unpaid work for wahine Māori, and you talked about that being problematic because unpaid equals unrecognised in your calculations. So, and I'm curious about that. I want to ask you about that a bit more. Because, of course, there are other ways to recognise. And it seems like you're working with a lot of groups and people who do, in fact, recognise the worth of stuff other than money. So it's a particular sector of society for whom money is the only way that things are valued, or the most important way that things are valued, and you're kind of helping talk to them. But do you see a shift happening? Because it's clear that there's a groundswell here. It's clear that there's organisations and people who are bringing different ways of valuing to the fore. Is there hope that we can move beyond this? The only way to properly see the value of something is to attach a dollar amount. I would really like to like to find a way around that. And I'm wondering what your reflections are, and as well onto Abby and Stephen, how you are thinking about the way the work that you're seeing in those spaces is valued in different ways.
See, I think I need to start by sort of clarifying where I see my work, and it's not in changing the system. And that's so what I mean by that is I work with all these incredible researchers whose work is focused on the way we do things is not good enough. We need to change it to a better way of doing things. Yeah, and that's not my work. And it used to be, and it's not these days. And the way I see my work is you're operating in a system that's inequitable, it's challenging, you're not in a best position to win within this current system, and I'm here to help you. So the way I see it is I'm leaving the system change to others because I can't do everything, and I'm going to focus on helping these organizations navigate the current system. And the current system is you demonstrate your value in quantitative terms and you put a dollar to it. And so, the organizations I work with are like education trust, mental health trust, sports trust. They're all these incredible organizations. They can't wait till the system changes. They have to get the funding now within the current system so they can keep having that impact on their community. And I desperately hope that it changes over time and that we do no longer need to quantify things in dollars. I think it's a silly way to do things, even though it's what I do for a job. And so,
You'll retire one day.
So that's sort of the position I take, is that there's better people out there to to change the system than me. I'm going to help you work within the current system. The other thing I'm really explicit about is that I focus on the positive stories in Te Ao Māori and the Māori economy. That means I'm not talking about all the problems. And there are numerous problems there, but I got tired of writing about the deficits in Māori, and I thought, look, Māori need the story of the amazing things they do and all the success they have, and no one's telling that story. Everyone's telling the story about the deficits and the problems. And, you know, I'm not saying they're telling it to Māori. I'm saying these stories are coming from Māori too. And I think that's important to have that out there. Once again, I can't do both, so I'm going to talk about the amazing things and leave the other bit to other people. So that's sort of my position, is I agree with you, and I'm not doing anything about it.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I will. But shall I go first?
Yeah, why not?
It's okay. You can go on. Yeah. Gosh, there's so much to say. Thanks, Jay, for what you've just said. I think it again resonates with a lot of the work we do, because there's a big deficit analysis on the communities that we work with, and we spend a lot of time trying to amplify, push, or find ways to do that. Not so much in number, but it's a similar effort. As far as what Kat's just asked us, I think we spend a lot of time in the university trying to hide the amount of time and labour that we attach to things that we care about, trying to find ways to work around, because the minute some of those things are costed, we're barred from doing them. So that's one response. But where our little presentation ended up is more so how we feel that the university needs to become more of a community space and to host events, to be a site of care and reciprocity and exchange, to be a place where social initiatives can work out and experiment and fail and get their knees skinned without actually fundamentally hurting their bottom line, because our core business is research. So come in, try stuff out, and we'll pay for that. We'll pay for the failure of those things, because that's our core business. We can write about it, or we can do something that we can call research. At the moment, we can still do that, but it's getting a bit tight. But yeah, so we're trying to kind of, in a sense, protect our capacity to use the university's resources, and part of that is kind of hiding at the moment some of that value. I feel like that usually. It's been
Sorry.
on record. Yeah.
I guess just to tack on to what Abby was saying, there are other stories I could have told you just from that last project. So, for instance, there's this incredible group in Melbourne called Our Village, and they were started in St Kilda by 5 mums who were sitting in a postnatal care ward looking at all the prams and car seats and cots that were being piled up there, waiting to be distributed to families in need. And these 5 women said, we're going to do something about this in 2009. And here we are 20 years later. They're now operating across all of Melbourne now as Our Village. And their goal is to find ways to rehome high-value baby care items to meet the total need in the state of Victoria. And they're in a position to do it because all of them were masters of logistics. So they were able to marshal 44,000 hours of volunteer labor, including from the corporate sector, and move through all this material. They've invented repair sites. They work with social workers to rehouse the goods. So they're leveraging a particular kind of relationship with the state, reinventing public-private partnership. And this is 5 women who started this, and it's not for profit, but because they're so good at impact reporting, they get lots of support. So I guess for me, it's like the world already is changing. That's just one other example. I could give you dozens and dozens of organizations that are already thinking about how to do things in profoundly different ways. And so for me, it's not the end of capitalism. It's just that it no longer becomes synonymous with the economy, and it seeds into the background in the face of all other kinds of ways in which people are making things, sharing things, and meeting needs. That's all happening. Yeah, and university can help even while it's falling apart.
Where is the other mic?
Wait, sorry, because we're webcasting, we need mics. And we do also have a list, so if it's just a quick question that builds on that, go for it, and then we're over here. Yes.
Just a quick question. How do you think we amplify those stories of people doing that? Like in New Zealand, there's a place called Warming Hearts that does the same thing with pre-loved baby gear, but I don't think a lot of people know about it.
Well, I mean, I can connect you with the people from our village. I think, in the United States, we use that language from Dean Spade of mutual aid. And oftentimes in post-COVID, that was a way that people were taking care of one another. I think that can be done on a inter-organizational basis. In our other project where we're looking at climate adaptation and social housing, we're working with a filmmaker to make a film saying, look, yep, thermal safety and housing is one thing, but building strong and cohesive communities to respond to climate change, that's something else. And that's something where we're learning from really our elders, the people who are living in this housing who know how to do that stuff. And our obligation is to share it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, there's a question here. Yeah.
Kia ora, thank you so much for your talking today. It's been amazing. I do have a question. Jay, you touched on it a little bit when you talked about focusing on the positive. But my question is, I work in food rescue and we spend a lot of time sending out data stats to our stakeholders. We've rescued this much food this month that equals this many meals or this much water saved or this much, We spend a lot of time doing that. And I just thinking about what you said, Abby, about measuring the good as well as the bad. Do we need to flip the script a little bit and say, if we didn't do this, this is what would happen? Do you think that would help with funding applications and things like that? I like to focus on the positive too, but it's not always working at the moment, especially with our government that we have at the moment. I'm hoping the webcaster didn't pick that up. I'm just wondering about flipping the script a little bit. Like, is it a good idea or is it a really stupid idea? Is it a really dumb question? I don't know.
No, it's not a dumb question at all. So I'm thinking of our colleague in the United States, Kelly and mine, and Abby's, a fellow by the name of George DiMartino. What was the name of that book that he just wrote?
The Tragic Science.
The Tragic Science.
How economists don't recognise harm or something.
So he's a trained economist speaking to economists, and he talks about this concept of harm-centered economics. And so one of the tools that they use for thinking about that is what they call counterfactual examples. So that would be a demonstration of that. What happens if we don't do this? But where he ends the book is this idea of, well, actually, quantification and return on investment and cost-benefit analysis, those are all strategies that aren't really capturing how to respond to the profound existential risk that we're in right now with climate change. So he turns in the final chapter of his book to something called decision-making under deep uncertainty, which reminds me a lot of your ACAD or whatever the acronym was there, the decision-making. Yeah. So, and basically the example he gives is how in the Colorado River system, they're trying to convene all the stakeholders to think about, when we allocated the water, we had the wrong measurement. It was a high water mark in the 1920s. And now we're in a situation where we've got millions and millions of people depending on this water. What do we do? Well, we turn to the stakeholders. We use complex adaptive system management. But what's interesting is who developed decision-making under deep uncertainty? It was actually the RAND Corporation, which was an outgrowth of the Navy from the Second World War. So on some level, his point is saying that, like, economics as we've known it, which is that CBA-style approach, cost-benefit analysis, economistic kind of thinking, that's literally dying out in the United States and is being replaced with experimental economics and other heterodox approaches. So, I don't want to, again, paint too rosy of a picture, but I think that that idea, the powerful counter-narrative and counterfactual is a part of that process. But then it makes economics into a conversation.
Just one quick thing, just from a design perspective, like a lot of the reason we're in this situation is because of design. And so I think, people often think design is a sort of creative thing, and it certainly is, but it is also a practice that is consequence. And so part of understanding what we design, what we put out into the world is understanding the consequences of those things. So I think it is really critical to take a sort of somewhat of a precautionary principle to what we plan. So when we do eco-design or sustainable design. There's a million words for these things. Part of it is planning across a life cycle what are the intended consequences and what are the unintended and likely consequences, because every time you make something, you also destroy something. You cannot make without destruction. You build a table, you cut down a tree. So those are things that we need to take better account of, particularly where design's kind of normative intent has been to produce more and more and more stuff. So I think we need new measures, but I also think it's very powerful to point out harms, because, the world isn't just sitting there benignly, it's growing. The problems are growing, the harms are growing, and there's an exponential increase in those harms. Some of them are visible, some of them are invisible, and at a micro scale, we need to be able to see and understand what it is we are contributing to. Yeah.
Jay, did you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I think it's not changing what you're doing. It's largely a communications exercise.
Yeah.
And at that point, when I would do a social impact report, I have a technical report, and then I might have 4 reports that come out of that, and they're all directed towards a particular audience, and they're all completely different. So, the one that goes to the government, because they're looking for funding, that'll have your BCR, your benefit cost ratio, your NPV, your net present value. It's based on setting that counterfactual, like Stephen said, and then looking at the difference and quantifying it. The one that goes to the community that supports that organisation has none of that in it. It's got quotes, it's got stories, and so it's, I think, about identifying what that particular audience you want to convince or you want to talk to, what information they want, and giving it to them in that format. And for the people around you, your sort of community, that might not be the positive story that they want. That might be to actually highlight the real negative harms, and that's why you were doing this in the first place. And so, yeah, it's sort of tailoring. Yeah.
Great, and you had a question. Where's our mic? Oh, Andrew's coming.
Abby and Stephen, I was struck by your reflections on the Ellen MacArthur butterfly diagram. And so if we think about that as a kind of normative model that's spread around as the circular economy, seen as that, that would then, I imagine, dictate how you think about how you measure the circular economy and focus on certain types of metrics. Whereas I was also struck by the quote from your participant who's, the tech is easy, it's the social organisation part that's hard. So I'm thinking if that's the bit, that's the challenge, what kind of measures do you think we should actually be focusing on?
Okay.
We can talk.
So, I'm thinking of a kindred spirit over in Australia to Jay, and is it Ingrid Burkett? Her name? Yes.
Familiar, but I can't remember.
Joe's McNeil's colleague.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, at Substation 33, they had 2 social workers that were there full time, and when they were getting people in who were arriving there to pay off their spark debt, so like back child support and other things, they might come in feeling really angry and sort of not ready for work. So they actually developed this kind of bespoke assessment of how people were feeling and how they were doing, and measured it over time. So for me, like that was something that one of our colleagues invented, that was kind of a measurement of, I guess, growing levels of social cohesion and belonging. And then, oh, gee, that's pretty cool. And you can share it. I can share it with you if you're interested. But to me, like, measuring the social dynamics in an ongoing way could be something that social enterprises like Substation 33 can do to improve their efficacy, right? So it's not an end in itself, and it's not just reporting to funders or whoever's interested. It's the measurement becomes functional to building the relationships through time. And to me, that seems to be really important. Now, why is that important for the circular economy? The Ellen MacArthur Foundation more recently has come to understand the importance of the social and solidarity economy in achieving all of its outcomes. So that's now, the language is shifting, even in that sort of very rarefied NGO world, I think, to something that's much more akin to what we've been interested in as a group. Yeah, and not just them, the United Nations has made similar proclamations about the importance of the social and solidarity economy and achieving the SDGs. Now, I don't know, are those the right measures either? I'm not sure.
I think they're valuable measures. I mean, I think the other one would be social learning, because, you know, we tend to leap over all that we have to learn about, like some of the things that we pointed out. So, yeah, I think that would be something that I have no metric for that, other than, measuring the mood in the room, and particularly if you're working with cohorts over time, there is a capacity to measure that. But yes, I think there's a lot that we need to point to in Jay's language. You know, that is the power of this work, is, you know, the kind of semiotic dimension. We create new measures, we create new indicators, we create visibility of things that haven't been valued before. And yeah, we need to spend more time thinking about how we do that. Jay, did you want to add to that? Or?
I got nothing to add to that.
Nothing to add. Okay, we've got time probably. We've got about 4 minutes before lunch. I can smell it. We've got 2 more questions. Is it Tammy here? Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Jay, you said you don't think you're changing the system. I'm a measurement geek, and I believe that when you communicate information really effectively, you can change a system, because you change how people value things, their perspective on things. So really, it's not a question, it's a comment. I think that effective measurement of impact, and when I say effective, nothing, this would be an interesting question. Nothing truly can be entirely quantified and measured in dollar terms, but money is what makes the world go round. We have to accept that, and the only way we change that system is by making them see us see things in a different way. So yes, it'd be interesting if you could, or if you've ever thought about valuing the impact of the measurement of impact, and how that might change, and how that might change the systems that we say we're not changing.
Say that bit again. So measuring the impact of measuring the impact.
Measuring the impact of valuing impact.
Oh, yes.
on how it affects change in the system. Because I believe it would affect change in the system. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's so, no, it is. It makes total sense to me. There's a man, Professor Hugh Campbell at Otago University, and I can't remember the name of the science. It's like metrologies or something, and it's the study of measuring things that are measured or something. Yeah. It's like the quantum physics observer effect or something. If you look at it, does it change? But yeah, I totally take your point, and I think it's that I'm not explicit about talking about systems and our need to change them. Not that I don't hope that what I'm doing is having an impact and changing them. Otherwise, I wouldn't be spending 10 hours a week writing stuff for LinkedIn and guides and things, you know. I don't need the work. It's just that I think if this stuff is out there, people will act differently. And I guess that's the thing. Like, if you put a number on something, does it change that thing, or does it attract people towards that thing? And I think it does. I think it attracts funding towards that thing just for the act of valuing it and quantifying it. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. But I have never seen a study of impact valuation and its ability to increase impact. Fascinating. I mean, what a cool study.
Yeah.
Anyone want to do that?
Yeah. Okay, we got time for one more question, and then we'll be stretching our legs and filling our bellies. Yeah, Georgia.
Kia ora, this is for Jay. As I'm interested in both taututu and it's like the idea of degrowth and post-growth. So, but I can't really consolidate those two things in my head because, yeah, I guess you know what I mean. But have you thought about those two and tried to consolidate them?
Just flip that tornado upside down and it all makes sense. It's, yeah, totally. I mean, the taututu model totally fits with a degrowth agenda in that you're putting the effort into Māori and instead of into economic capital or physical capital or something. So you're saying, look, we're going to use the currency of social interaction, of innovation, of enterprise, and we're going to direct that towards enhancing Māori. And in order to do that, we need to make less stuff, we need to buy less stuff, we need to be more efficient with our material use. And I think it's a model that escalates Māori and escalates, a degrowth agenda just as well as it would escalate crypto. I think it applies. It's an ethic rather than a model or a framework, and that ethic is directed towards, reciprocal, mutual benefits, escalation over time. You can point it at whatever you want, I'm sure. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, tēnā tātou. That's us for this session. Dearly has some gifts for our speakers, which are wonderful circular gifts because I found them in an administrator's cupboard, because these are the legendary Massey pen, that it's a refillable pen that people have been given for many decades, that's no longer available because people mocked it. But we found them. These are classic, and you can refill them. So they're circular in multiple ways. Yes, but thank you so much for speaking to us. Yeah.